The views and opinions expressed on the following program are those of the host and guests and do not necessarily represent those of any organization, including One Generation Away.
The freedom of a people to choose its leaders is the root of liberty.
Keep alive this experiment in liberty.
Liberty, in case you've forgotten, is the soul's right to breathe.
Government should be very minimal in protecting liberty.
Peace cannot be purchased at the cost of liberty.
The sturdy ground of liberty.
Liberty once lost is lost forever.
Fight for their liberty and for our security.
Guarantees individual liberty.
This great republic, born alone in liberty.
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 Just how much do you want liberty?
This is Liberty Nation with Tim Donner,
a production of LibertyNation.com.
Cutting through the double talk, taking on the topics, going after what the politicians really mean, and making it all clear. For your freedom and your liberty. Liberty Nation with Tim Donner.
Impeachment fever sweeps the Potomac. The battle is joined and the game is on. Welcome back into Liberty Nation Radio, a production of LibertyNation.com and heard from coast to coast on the Radio America Network. The outlines of the 2020 presidential election are now set. President Trump will run on the economy, jobs, America first. Democrats will run on impeaching Trump. Yes, that is all they've done with control of the House of Representatives, and now after a phone call between Trump and the president of Ukraine, the entire Democratic House leadership has joined the radical left with calls for impeachment. We will break down this impeachment fever from multiple angles today, and we'll be joined in the analysis by LibertyNation.com Chief Political Correspondent Graham Noble, political columnist Joe Schaeffer, and Legal Affairs Editor Scott Cosenza.
Say what? Say what? Say what? One more time.
We commence the proceedings with our signature segment, Say What? And this week, the entire impeachment exercise is one big say what. So let's dive right in. The 2020 election, folks, cannot come soon enough. Is this what the voters voted for? A party granted control of the U.S. House of Representatives and has done only one thing so the voters can say, I put these people in charge of the law, and all I got was this lousy impeachment. With Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi now no longer able to hold off the scorched earth leftists who've effectively seized control of the party from her, the Democrats have finally and fully made their bed, and now they're going to have to sleep in it. There's no turning back now. Impeachment will dominate the political landscape from here to November of next year, at which point the voters will deliver their verdict on a party that has done nothing but try to impeach and a president who's produced a rising economic tide and driven his enemies to the point of madness. Impeach him before he even takes office. Impeach him for firing Comey. Impeach him for Russia. Impeach him over the Emoluments Clause. Impeach him for being out of his mind. We'll invoke the 25th Amendment. Impeach Kavanaugh. Remember that one last week? Impeach Trump over whatever. We'll think of something else. Do they actually seriously think this is what the voters want? Have they even bothered to consider the folks in the heartland, the folks who got Trump elected, the folks who need to be turned back their way if they have any hope of avoiding another 4 years of this man who's driven them beyond drink? You can bet those people in Michigan and Wisconsin and Minnesota and Iowa and Ohio are watching in horror at what has become of one of our two major political parties. It's become a steaming cauldron of impeachment and of socialism, a nightmare from days gone by for anyone who's lived long enough to remember the disastrous consequences of unrestrained socialism, tyranny, misery, death. They want to take even more of your money, a lot more of it, maybe most of it, so they can seize control of your health care, your air conditioner, ban your car, get rid of airplanes. They think you shouldn't even be allowed to eat meat anymore. part and parcel of a D.C. swamp that's become such a self-satisfied, insulated echo chamber, nobody's paying attention to the people who get up every day, work hard, and play by the rules. Talk about a wall. The Democrats oppose an actual border wall, while they build a wall of denial and deception and deceit, an impenetrable wall which forever averts their eyes from the lives and fortunes of everyday Americans, working in record numbers in a vibrant economy, fears of joblessness largely dispelled. And Americans understand the best welfare program in the world is a job. And now we actually have over 1 million more of those jobs than people to fill them. It's true. You can look it up. So, this just, I don't even know how to react anymore. Comey leaks, and we wind up with a 2-year-long special counsel investigation. Some cowardly mole in the White House leaks that Trump is doing things he doesn't like, and the New York Times runs banner headlines in a multi-part series on it. This whistleblower leaks, and now we get impeachment. Seeing a pattern of leaking here and what they produce? Like a permanent ruling class, these swamp creatures from the D.C. lagoon rear their heads and throw national security to the wind if they feel threatened by a man like Trump who calls them out and exposes them to the light of day for all to see. The whistleblower, or more precisely permanent bureaucrat, deep state operative, who leaked details of the conversation Trump had with the Ukrainian president, possessed no first-hand knowledge of the call, and yet, in a spectacular breach of national security, this operative, hiding behind the veil of anonymity, collected second- and third-hand accounts and media reports to file a complaint certain to be swallowed whole by a bloodthirsty Congress and media drained of every remaining ounce of credibility. Of course, the Democrats called for immediate impeachment without even seeing the transcript. They were not expecting Trump to release the transcript of the call. And when he did, it showed that the quid pro quo they alleged, foreign aid withheld from Ukraine unless the Ukrainian president ordered an investigation of Joe Biden, was a figment of their vivid, Trump-deranged imagination, which has been working overtime and double shifts from the moment Trump was elected president. Now, this is all you really need to hear to prove the point. The point about their Trump-deranged imagination. Listen to the active and deranged imagination of the House Intelligence Committee Chairman, the bug-eyed Adam Schiff, who opened his congressional hearing, This is his opening statement with his personal, fantastical interpretation of the Trump-Zelensky call.
We've been very good to your country, very good. No other country has done as much as we have. But you know what? I don't see much reciprocity here. I hear what you want. I have a favor I want from you, though. And I'm going to say this only 7 times, so you better listen good. I want you to make up dirt on my political opponent, understand lots of it. On this and on that, I'm going to put you in touch with people, and not just any people. I'm going to put you in touch with the Attorney General of the United States, my Attorney General, Bill Barr. He's got the whole weight of the American law enforcement behind him. And I'm going to put you in touch with Rudy. You're going to love him, trust me. You know what I'm asking, and so I'm only going to say this a few more times, in a few more ways. And by the way, don't call me again. I'll call you when you've done what I asked.
Pure fantasy. But if you thought that was unbelievable, listen to Congressman Schiff explain away his breathtaking fantasy.
As an aside, my summary of the president's call was meant to be at least part in parody.
Parody. The head of the House Intelligence Committee wants to remove a duly elected president for an illusory high crime or misdemeanor, and he makes his opening argument with parody. But I suppose we should hardly be surprised. On Wednesday, Adam Schiff said the quid pro quo alleged in the whistleblower complaint was an impeachable offense. Then on Thursday, after the transcript was released showing no quid pro quo, he said he doesn't need a quid pro quo to pursue impeachment. Of course he doesn't. Anything will do. We'll condemn the man and then backfill and find a crime we might be able to pin on him.
Liberty Nation with Tim Donner.
Where can you find honest political commentary with sobering analysis, accountability, deconstructing threats to our liberty, and boldly reporting the truth? Subscribe to the LibertyNation.com YouTube channel, where facts matter.
We believe that all men are entitled to blessings of liberty.
This is Liberty Nation with Tim Donner.
Though it seems the Democrats are flailing away mindlessly, driven so mad by Trump that they can't even see their way clear to develop a coherent strategy, allow me to dissuade you of that notion. There's one word to describe it. The Democrat strategy: projection. It's a technique used to reflect onto others that which you've done yourself. And if you had to use a single word to describe the Democrat strategy for kneecapping Donald Trump, both before he was president and right up to the moment, it would be projection. The Democrats made a living for 2 years off of accusations of Trump-Russia collusion, which were thoroughly discredited in the Mueller report, and it seems lost on official Washington that most of the information in the infamous and scurrilous Trump dossier, which became the principal basis for the Obama administration's surveillance of the Trump campaign and ultimately the Mueller investigation, was obtained by the Hillary Clinton campaign from, wait for it, Russia. They do the deed and blame Trump for exactly what they did. Projection. The Obama administration conducts surveillance of their political enemies, the Trump campaign, then says Trump is a danger to the republic. Projection. Hillary Clinton runs a foundation designed to fill her coffers with foreign money in the run-up to a presidential bid. Then Democrats accuse Trump of corrupt business practices. Projection. Joe Biden delivers a literal quid pro quo to the Ukrainian government. Fire the prosecutor going after the company that's paid his son more than $3 million, or I'll withhold the money ticketed for your country. And now Democrats say it's Trump who delivered an imaginary quid pro quo and should be impeached over it. Projection. Countless other examples, but you get the point. This is the Democrats' playbook. Reflect the ugliness of their own transgressions onto the president who unmasked them. Projection. Trouble is, facts are facts. And the president was typically in the mood for a fight as he laid the blame for Ukraine squarely at the feet of the former vice president.
What Biden did is a disgrace. What his son did is a disgrace. The son took money from Ukraine. The son took money from China. Now, when Biden's son walks away with millions of dollars from Ukraine and he knows nothing, and they're paying him millions of dollars, that's corruption.
Sure, Trump is prone to exaggeration, but the Biden quid pro quo is right there on tape. But Biden decided to do a couple of other things Democrats always do. First, proclaim with bravado that Trump is going down, and then go on a show where he knows he'll never be challenged, the late-night show of Trump hater Jimmy Kimmel, to simply dismiss the facts.
Trump's doing this because he knows I'll beat him like a drum. This is not about me and my family. There's not one single solitary legitimate journalist in the world who's given any credibility to this. They've debunked all of what he's had to say for the past since Giuliani started this a while ago. It's such a blatant abuse of power. It seems to me it's awful hard to avoid the conclusion that it is an impeachable offense.
But the pro-Trump PAC pounced on the week's events to release a devastating ad which in 1 minute tells the entire tale of Joe Biden and his son Hunter.
What does white privilege really look like? Weeks after Joe Biden visits China as vice president, his son secures a private billion-dollar deal with the Bank of China. After Biden is named America's top diplomat to Ukraine, his son joins Ukraine's largest private gas producer with no relevant experience and lands another $1 million deal. And before Ukraine's top prosecutor can investigate the shady dealings of Biden's son, he gets the prosecutor fired, then brags about it.
I said, I'm telling you, you're not getting $1 billion. I said, you're not getting $1 billion. I'm going to be leaving here. And I think it was, 6 hours? I said, I'm leaving in 6 hours. If the prosecutor's not fired, you're not getting the money. Oh, son of a bitch. Got fired.
Instead of another failed presidential witch hunt, House Democrats should investigate one of their own, Joe Biden. Great America PAC is responsible for the content of this message.
So that's the pro-Trump Political Action Committee that released that ad containing irrefutable proof that Joe Biden had blatant conflicts of interest involving his son. And Biden won't be able to hold the wolves off much longer because the Democrat Party is not likely to do much to defend him. Why, you say? Well, because the direction of the party's presidential primary is opposite to Biden's relative moderation. Let me translate that for you. The progressives who have established domination of the party may be willing or even anxious to throw Biden overboard if it provides them the ability to demand Trump's impeachment day after day after day. So the wolves have resumed howling at the moon, certain that this latest scandal will be the one to finally take down this president who's driving them to the point of madness. Then the Democrats can tell their voters they accomplished something. Impeachment. No legislation, no bills, no progress on anything, but they did the most important thing of all, impeachment. And that only the corrupt Republican Trump enablers in the Senate who refused to convict Trump and remove him from office thwarted the true will of the American people. The beauty and elegance of a democracy or constitutional republic or any country with free and fair elections is that it will be left to the voters to sort all this out. And all I can tell you is that for me, and maybe for you, this presidential election can't come soon enough. It's already beyond time for the voters to cast their lot with this president or the barbarians at the gate expending every ounce of their energy to take him down. Quick break, and then we'll bring on the big guns from Liberty Nation to deliver their own analysis of this watershed week, where Democrats have made their bed with impeachment and now prepare to sleep in it.
Liberty Nation with Tim Donner.
Exhausted by all the fake news? On LibertyNation.com's YouTube channel, facts and fresh, bold analysis are what you get without the leftist spin. Subscribe today to the LibertyNation.com YouTube channel because
Truth
is making a comeback.
Far more important than my political future and far more important than yours, the well-being of our country.
This is Liberty Nation with Tim Donner.
How can you really explain this deranged behavior, this electoral suicide that Democrats have been committing day after day? Well, here's one possible or even probable explanation. Maybe these Democrats have just given up on 2020. Or figured this impeachment thing is a riverboat gamble, but the only shot they've got, and They want to go down flailing away at the man who's cast the sunlight on Dracula and crudely exposed all the dark crevices of corruption which pervade this beltway culture, this iron triangle, this unholy trinity of politics, media, and academia, whose only remaining agenda seems to be self-preservation and the forcible removal of a president chosen by the voters in a free and fair election. Now, stop for a moment and consider the implications of some unnamed functionary taking matters into his own hands and alerting the media whenever he objects to something said by the president in a supposedly secure conversation with a world leader. Who died and left some insignificant mole in charge, free to leak like a sieve? Who elected this person? How can a security breach of this magnitude be allowed to stand? Why, even the virulently anti-Trump CNN analyst and former intelligence operative Phil Mudd condemned the breach.
Boy, I'm about ready to blow a gasket. Can you explain? That is extremely unusual. And I listened to presidential phone calls when I was an official at the White House under George W. Bush in 2001. Can you explain to me, A, why it's the U.S. intelligence community's responsibility to listen to the president of the United States speaking to a foreign leader, and B, why the U.S. intelligence community, under the rules provided by the Democrats in Congress, are responsible to report to the Congress what the president of the United States says. Last I checked, Chris, when I served, we're responsible for chasing the Russians, the Chinese, the Iranians, and terrorists. We're not responsible for reporting to the Congress what the president says. The president can say what he wants to Putin. He can say what he wants to Kim Jong-un. The president can say what he wants. It's not the responsibility of the intel guys to go police the president and go snitch on him to the Congress.
Folks, this conduct from the deep state is the issue which will persist long after the details and context of the president's phone call are sorted out. Now, what about some other perspectives on all this? On an LNTV, Liberty Nation TV, which is up on YouTube right now, political columnist for LibertyNation.com, Joe Schaeffer, said, "We should hardly be surprised given all the water already under the dam."
Well, it's just par for the course for what we've seen all along. They're reckless and irresponsible, and they don't even seem to realize the potential damage of their own situation. They're not holding a strong hand here. When this narrative comes out, when the truth comes out to what Joe and Hunter Biden have been up to in Ukraine and especially in China, this is going to look a lot worse than any conversation that I read that transcript, as I'm sure all of you did, and it didn't look like a lot to me. But there is a lot of corruption with Hunter Biden, other prominent Democrats like Dianne Feinstein. How is this going to look to the American people? Joe Biden and Hunter Biden fly in 2013 on Air Force Two to China. 10 days later, Hunter Biden's firm has a $1.5 billion deal with the Bank of China. Trump goes into these things knowing they're holding a weak hand, and then he can force them into attacking him with their weak hand. It's amazing that they keep falling for it.
So that was Joe Schaeffer. We also got analysis on LibertyNation.com and LNTV from our chief political correspondent, Graham Noble, who noted how this may represent the culmination of a seemingly never-ending attack unleashed by the Democrats.
This longest-winded ever impeachment process that has essentially been going on for almost 3 years now suddenly came to a head almost unexpectedly, and I think it was because of the panic over the Biden situation, because Joe Biden's son, Hunter Biden, has absolutely no business being on the board of directors of any energy company, Ukrainian or otherwise. I mean, he doesn't have the resume for it. He doesn't have the, he's not in the energy sector. So clearly him getting that position in the first place was some form of kind of pay to play. Not only is there nothing in that transcript that is incriminating in any way, but also if we're going to start talking about U.S. politicians reaching out to foreign sources to benefit themselves in an election, then, we got a whole list of people we got to talk about before we even get to Trump.
And the person at the top of that list is certainly Joe Biden. But let us not forget that there's an ongoing investigation into the Obama Justice Department spying on the Trump campaign. There's an Inspector General report and then a full report expected from Attorney General William Barr, though heaven knows when we'll become privy to that. Now, the Democrats have broached impeachment from before Trump was even sworn in. That's a fact. Maxine Waters and Al Green, out on the radical fringes of an ever more radical party, actually said they would start impeachment inquiries before Trump was even inaugurated. Now, the chickens will come home to roost on these people, these Democrats, these radical leftists who want to kick out a president because they hate him and force their radical vision of a transformed America on the people of this country, a country where fossil fuels are replaced by energy from the wind, where borders are removed and anyone who wants to come here is welcome, where private health insurance is confiscated in favor of a government-controlled single-payer system, which will also offer taxpayer-funded health care to illegal immigrants, where social justice warriors can run roughshod on everything we've thought for centuries was good about America. An America which sacrificed 1 million lives to end slavery, saved the world from Nazis and communists. The America the left wants to tear down and replace with their vision of a socialist utopia, which, in reality, would represent nothing more than a living hell. And believe it or not, the Earth continued to spin on its axis despite impeachment hysteria. And we'll be back in a moment to examine threats and promising developments regarding your individual liberty.
Liberty Nation with Tim Donner.
And now we have reached the single portion of Liberty Nation Radio in which we will not be discussing impeachment. Well, maybe a little. As we welcome in our regular contributor, constitutional lawyer and LibertyNation.com, legal affairs editor Scott Cosenza.
And podcast editor.
And podcast editor, too. Look, I don't have time for a full list of your curriculum vitae.
That's the newest one, though, so I appreciate it.
Your CV.
Right.
It gives me a chance to say curriculum vitae, which I think impresses people more than me. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
All right, so, we're looking at you, Scott, today as kind of a shelter from the storm of impeachment. There are actually things going on that affect your liberty. A whole lot more than a phone call between Donald Trump and Zelensky. So let's get to them. But first, briefly, your own thoughts on impeachment.
I took a look at the whistleblower complaint, and I was surprised at how much it seemed like an assassination attempt by the deep state against Donald Trump and his presidency. And while I'm cautious, I'm hopeful that President Trump did not engage in some kind of a quid pro quo thing, which I think we don't know as of yet. What concerns me more, Tim, is the nature of this attack on the president. Again, we have a person sort of stepping outside their bounds who has access to these secure communications to use it to. It seems to me, again, if you read the actual the whistleblower complaint, it reads like a partisan complaint itself, referencing what it chooses to reference and the breadth that it goes into to kind of paint a case rather than a kind of simple just the facts, ma'am, recitation of, I believe I have this burden, this duty to report this activity because the law requires me to do so under this section, and here is the report I have to make on it. This is a conclusory report. This is somebody who's painting a picture rather than reporting facts. So that does disturb me as well.
Why do you say we don't know if there was a quid pro quo? Because we have the transcript of the conversation. We have, On top of that, Trump admitting what he said before the transcript was released. So why do you say we don't know?
Well, in the air, I will say, and I dislike this idea of like some, whisper down the lane kind of somebody told somebody something, right? So that's a bad way to sort of proceed with these important matters. But in the air is this potential that maybe not Trump himself, but one of his deputies or seconds said to somebody on the Ukrainian side, if you want X to come through in your favor, whether it's arms sales or loans or whatever, that you'll be sure and see that this Biden matter is investigated.
You mean sort of like when Biden said, I'm going to withhold foreign aid from Ukraine unless you fire the prosecutor that's investigating my son's company.
The thing that grabbed me from the transcript was his asking for the CrowdStrike information.
Yeah.
This man is still trying to understand the attack that was leveled against him, and then, Tim, of course, the attack that was leveled against the American public because of this. So we don't have all that information yet. It would be nice to see it.
Well, the CrowdStrike is something that the media has largely ignored because they're the ones that said that the DNC was hacked by Russia, and they're opponents and bitter opponents of Vladimir Putin. So we have only the word of this one private company.
Yeah, it doesn't fit the narrative.
So there's so much, and I think behind it all, too, Scott, is any help he can get from Ukraine in determining how the whole Russia collusion hoax began, how the spying on the Trump campaign began, where it began. He's going to get all the information he can, or William Barr will. And, of course, William Barr will be Hitler by the time this is over because he's the one
he'll be Hitler by the time we're done recording this program.
He refused to take the whistleblower complaint, i.e. the deep state operative complaint, seriously.
Yeah.
Because he's just a political hack who's only working for Trump. So there's no way to get around that. And honestly, Scott, at the same time, when did we ever think that Eric Holder was not acting politically? And sometimes maybe he wasn't.
When he walked to the water cooler, for instance, or ordered new paper towels for the same place.
So we're somewhat vulnerable to the notion that because an attorney general is appointed by a given president, that automatically you discount any action he takes as legitimate and turn them into political hacks. That's what it's come to. All right.
Sorry for the extended diversion.
All right. So as the world continues to spin on its axis, unbeknownst to the elite media in Texas, in something that actually matters to real people living lives, a cop was caught falsifying speeding tickets.
So this is a case out of Dallas where the police officer Matthew Allen Rushing was arrested and charged with lying to investigators about his ticket writing. And it turns out that he wrote just bogus tickets in order, Tim, to get this overtime bonuses and quotas that were established.
I'm shocked.
Exactly right. Well, Tim, while it's illegal to institute quotas for this kind of thing, what it's not illegal to do is institute activity goals. And the magic trick comes from abracadabra. when you stop calling it one thing and call it another, even though the activity is exactly the same, which is that if you don't pull over a sufficient quantity of motorists for a sufficient number of violations, Tim, for a sufficient dollar amount to be distributed.
How many times over the years have you heard people say, friends, people you know, associates, people at work, say, yeah, I got caught by the cops. Obviously, it's the time of month where they have to meet their quota. So even if that hasn't always been true, the perception is that it's true. And then this kind of story comes out.
The facts are on the ground. Yeah. And this was part of the Selective Training Enforcement Program grant funded by the National Highway Traffic and Safety Administration. So it's federal tax dollars that are being used to pay for local cops to punish the citizens for having an expired sticker or whatever the thing is, of course, that has nothing whatsoever to do with actual highway safety. These are not tickets, Tim, designed to encourage highway safety. That has nothing to do with it.
That's very funny. Just the concept of that is hysterical.
There you go. Right.
And then a related story as we head sort of northeast from Texas to Cincinnati, Ohio, officials are working to overturn the voters' will on another issue that affects ordinary people, the people ignored by the elite media. Speed cameras.
Tim, the Cincinnati politicians are...
Cincinnati,
once
like
again,
that. Very good.
That was for you.
That's good.
The Cincinnati politicians are... once again trying to thwart the will of the voters who have said, Tim, they do not wish to be monitored by the robot cameras and their enforcement partners in order that they be alleviated with all their dough, like these other places.
Why should they have anything to say about it?
The politicians, though, they just need all that cash to spend on their favored programs and things and friends. So members of the city council there have been for over a decade trying to enact these camera plans, and the citizens there actually passed a charter change, like a constitutional amendment for the city to say that they couldn't do it. And the city managers now put out a call to speed camera vendors to submit proposals for bringing back photo radar to the city. So anyway, I just think it's one of those things where we always have to stay vigilant against these attacks on liberty. In this case, it's an attack against it's an attack motivated by money. For the citizens of Cincinnati, you think of all the time that every person who gets one of these tickets, often bogus, has to deal with fighting about it. There's no human being you can talk to. It's insanely frustrating. This is where the rubber meets the road for a lot of people in terms of their, they're dealing with the frustrations of those who would rule them.
One of the most really interesting, profound legal battles going on now is the issue of state marijuana laws and federal marijuana laws, because you've got states where pot is legal, and at the federal level, it's still illegal. And now, is this a camel's nose under the tent that the House passed a Safe Banking Act, which would not penalize banks for, well, you take it from there?
Well, Tim, I think that unless there's some massive sea change in the attitudes of Americans and the trends of attitudes of Americans, we can all agree we're going to get to a point where marijuana is federally legal, at least in the places where it's also statewide legal. And right now there's this untenable situation, like you mentioned. For instance, there are large marijuana businesses in these states where it's legal. You can imagine what the most successful marijuana business in California must their budget be, right? Well, for a lot of these places, they have to deal literally in cash, talking about greenbacks, which is forgetting about the logistical nightmare.
Nice turn of phrase there, greenbacks.
There's the safety issue.
Yeah.
There are these like Navy SEAL team of privateers that these people hire to guard their money. They can't just go on the computer and send some funds to pay their people because of the banks being skittish about dealing with them because of the federal prohibition.
Law.
Right. So this is called the Safe Banking Act, and it was passed by the House on Wednesday. We'll see if it gets into federal law, but I think it's an important move forward in terms of if these states are allowed to actually have different laws in their states, there's going to have to be an accommodation made at the federal level. We cannot go for very long with this tension between the state and federal law.
Well, of course, far simpler solution than trying to illegalize, to make it a word, pot in individual states where the barn door has long since been closed, is to simply make it not illegal anymore, decriminalized, legalized at the federal level. But we shall keep a close eye on that. Thank you, Scott.
Thanks, Tim.
This program, Liberty Nation Radio and LibertyNation.com's own podcasts, The Uprising, hosted by Scott, with guest appearances from yours truly, plus The Rabbit Hole, Politics and Prose, where past is prologue, all available at LibertyNation.com. So that is it for this week, but we'll be back at you next week. Same time, same station. Till then, this is Tim Donner saying, stand up for liberty. And we'll see you next time on Liberty Nation Radio.